We had a commenter ask, why aren't your toggles all at 2-foot center on your flats? And it's not my fault. This is the way people build at this campus, and it's the way people built before I got here. Now that I'm not leading the builds on things anymore, the new folks are building flats this way again. But it's not my preferred way. The toggles are at 2 foot on center. My preferred method is to run another center support of framing down the middle, and then all of these be 2-foot short pieces so that you get nice, consistent 2-foot square pattern on the back. And that's going to provide a whole lot more support than this structure. Another user commented about climbing the backs of flats. I can't climb the backs of this flat without these things collapsing because there's no center support here. We're not supposed to climb the backs of flats anyway, but most stagehands have done it at one point in their life just because they're in a hurry. The other thing that's done really weird here is this one toggle is laid flat, and that's because that's where the 4x8 piece of Luan meets the 4x4 piece of Luan, and someone thinks that that will provide more support and more structure. And actually what it does, by laying the piece flat, you've actually weakened the structure of your flat. You should put that one right on the center, and the 2 pieces of Luan should overlap, and you should be able to toenail into the 1 piece of framing. You shouldn't have to double it up. This is where your accuracy of construction comes in, and when you are accurate, that's your most important piece. Outer framing, and that piece needs to be at 8 feet so that your 4x8 lines up down the center of it. And then you don't need to lay it flat. You don't have to add another piece. You don't have to make it ugly like this. And you can keep your structural integrity. But again, 2-foot by 2-foot squares is what we want. That's our standard basic model to go off of. This is a drawing of what that structure should look like on a plan. I wouldn't build anything this way. I think they're trying to get away with it this way because they're using 1/4-inch Luan. I also don't like using 1/4-inch Luan. I use 1/8-inch Luan. If you use 1/8-inch Luan, you certainly can't do this. The 1/4-inch Luan does provide a little bit more support, but it tweaks and twists and wobbles too much because it doesn't have the full structure of the framing that we really need for it to be a TV style or hard flat. At least this guy doesn't have the 1 piece turned sideways. It's either here or here. It looks like it's got to be here. It's got to be, this is the seam right here. You know, you can get it accurate. So those 2 pieces of Luan line up down the center of your piece of framing. We are carpenters. We can be that accurate. Really, we can. This is missing this whole center support. It's not the best way to build your flat. It can suffice, it can get by, but I would not build them this way. In addition, no one bothered to staple and glue down the facing to the toggles. Oh my God, what the heck? What a piece of crap. When I build flats, they look more like this. I have the outside frame, I put a center support running the entire length down the middle, and then I put slightly less than 2 feet pieces in here because distance from center to edge is 2 feet, so this is going to be less than 2 feet, but it makes 2-foot by 2-foot squares. And this is your standard flat construction style. This is how you want to build all your flats. If you're using the medium crown stapler, it's going to be real hard to get these 2 pieces to line up and get your piece in and toenail it in because the tool is just too big and bulky to easily toenail. And what I tend to do is I tend to offset. It's not as attractive, but so a little offset is not a big deal. If you want to, you can pop those up there and you can shoot some brad nails in there. Brad nails you could get in much easier, or narrow crown staples. Some of the narrow crown staplers you could get in there and toenail them in. This is how you should be building your flats. Supports every 2 feet. And then if it's a weird flat or an odd-shaped flat, there will be some spots where it won't be 2 feet. If it's a 3-foot flat, you go from here to 2 feet, and then there's a 1x2 square. That's my standard procedure. You could build, if it's a 3-foot flat, 3 foot here, and put a centerpiece and build it that way. But I like to just stick with the rule of starting everything with a 2-foot by 2-foot square, and then everything else beyond that being the little oddball pieces. Here we go. This one's 3 feet across-ish, I'm guessing. It looks like it's about 3 feet, maybe 2'8" or something like that. And that would be your 2-foot squares, 2-foot square, 2-foot square. It's not quite 8 feet, it's 7 feet. And then all these oddball pieces over there. That's the way to build your flats. Again, if you want to line them up and toenail them together, you can put the first piece in, that's easy. It's the second piece when it's lined up that you have to toenail in with some narrow crown staples, or work really hard to get your medium crown staples in there because the tool has just such a big, bulky nose. It doesn't do well for toenailing into tight spaces. 3x7. All right, this is a really, really bad one. This is 100% insufficient framing. You can't just do an outer framing and a single toggle in the middle. Look at this thing, it's all just wobbly, wibbly, wobbly everywhere, and it's just not sufficient. I should throw this one out directly, or we should add more framing in, but it was probably poorly constructed. Jay built it. I don't know if it's worth trying to resurrect it. It's totally insufficient in its framing. You gotta have 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, and fill that out. Well, it's not quite 8 feet also, so there's that as well. Here's another one with the right framing structure. This one's not quite 8 feet either. It's, according to the tag, 7 feet 4, but it's the right type of framing. 2 foot squares, 2 foot squares, 2 foot squares, and then this extra little smaller one because it's not quite 8 feet at the top. You really need this amount of structure for the flat to have its integrity. Otherwise, it does a lot of wobble. If you only do the horizontal pieces every 2 feet, you're getting a lot of twist in your flats that you're always having to fight. Most of the folks building flat before I got here also were building everything with 1/4-inch Luan. And I don't use 1/4-inch Luan. I use 1/8-inch Luan. I want to keep my flats light, especially when I've got a 4 foot by 16 foot flat and it's covered with 1/4-inch Luan. Now I've doubled the weight and I've got to muscle around this big, giant, heavy flat. Sometimes people say you can't staple through the 1/8-inch Luan. You keep shooting your nails through it. Well, adjust your pressure, adjust your depth on your tool, or turn your pressure down. There are ways to do it and make it work. You just have to work with your tool. Once you've got everything glued down and you haven't shot your staples all through the Luan, it's the glue that's holding them in place anyway. The staples are just holding it there while the glue dries. You may say that, well, I have to hang pictures and things on my flats, so a 1/4 inch is better. If you're hanging something on the flat, you're going to have to put a piece of blocking behind your wall, whether it's 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch. Save yourself some money. Save yourself from building heavier flats than they need to be. Build them with 1/8 inch Luan and build them with enough framing.